Hello, I'm Mohsen Jamal and you watch Afghan News. British Prime Minister David Cameron on Tuesday pledged to support talks with the Taliban, saying that the nearly 10-year Afghan war could be resolved like the conflict in Northern Ireland. On his second day in Afghanistan, he also announced the creation of a St. Hearst-style military academy to train Afghan officers ahead of the pull-out of Western combat forces by 2014. Cameron told a joint news conference with President Hamid Karzai in Kabul that a British-led military academy is staffed with around 120 British military trainers, hopes to open its doors in 2013 and train 1,350 Afghan officers, a year attracting a funding pledge of $38 million from the United States. He also defended plans to increase British aid to Afghanistan despite austere budget cuts at home, branding opponents hard-hearted. Cameron met with President Hamid Karzai and U.S. General David Petraeus on Tuesday, and Karzai offered his condolences to the family of a soldier found dead in South Afghanistan on Monday.
The
21 Afghan migrants trying to reach Italy were detained by the U.S. Border Protection Agency north of the Mediterranean island of Crete, according to radio reports Tuesday. The group, which included 7 children, had set sail from the western coast of Turkey and was heading to Italy when their vessel was detected by Frontex border guards near the Greek island of Kethira, north of Crete. 2 suspected human traffickers of Turkish origin were arrested and the migrants were taken to the Cretan city of Hania. This comes as Turkey, under a recent deal with the European Union, will be required to take back its own citizens as well as those of other non-EU states who entered the EU illegally. The rules would not apply to asylum seekers. 4 NATO soldiers were killed Tuesday in 2 attacks in East Afghanistan, where mostly U.S. troops are battling a fierce Taliban insurgency close to the border with Pakistan, the military said. 3 soldiers were killed in an improvised bomb explosion and the 4th in an attack, the international forces said, without giving further details or announcing their nationalities. This comes a day after a British soldier who was reported missing from a checkpoint in the southern Helmand province early Monday was found dead later in the day. A spokesman for the Taliban said that the militant group had captured the missing soldier on Sunday and had executed him in the Babaji area of Helmand province. The chief of the Pakistan Taliban has been isolated from his militant group for more than a year and is rapidly losing control, a newspaper reported on Tuesday, a day after the military said it had launched an offensive in the northwest. Associates of Pakistani Taliban leader Hakimullah Mahsood and intelligence officials in Islamabad say Mahsood's opposition is tenuous following the defection of one of his top commanders last week. The defecting commander Fazl Saeed Haqqani, who was the Taliban leader in the Kurm region on the Afghan border late June, had said that he left over the group's brutal attacks on civilians. Haqqani has pledged to fight against the Pakistani Taliban and U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Several more Taliban commanders in Kurm, where the Pakistani army has just launched an offensive, might desert Mahsood soon, and the military was seeking to split commanders from him, reports said. 2 explosions at a municipal government building in the Iraqi town of Taji on Tuesday killed at least 27 people and wounded 50 others, officials said. A car bomb and another explosive detonated in a crowded parking lot of the government building in Taji, about 20 kilometers north of Baghdad, security sources said. Deputy Health Minister Khamis al-Saad said the blast killed 27 people and wounded 50. An interior ministry source put the initial toll at 35 dead and 28 wounded. The bombings followed a series of attacks that targeted Iraq's security forces over the last 2 days, killing at least 10 police and soldiers and wounding 22 others. Libyan officials are claiming to have intercepted 2 boats carrying a cache of weapons from Qatar, reportedly intended for rebels fighting forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi. On Monday, Musa Ibrahim, a government spokesman, said 11 rebels were captured from the boats close to shore near the town of Janzur, just west of Tripoli. Foreign reporters were later taken to Tripoli's port, where they were shown a cache of rifles and ammunition displayed in a tent, but not the captured boats. Several of the ammunition boxes were marked in English as coming from the armed forces of Qatar. Qatar has emerged as one of the main supporters of the rebels, and its involvement in the country's civil war has enraged Libyan officials. Residents of the central Syrian city of Hama are bracing for an imminent assault from security forces as troops and tanks surround the city in an attempt to quell protests against the rule of President Bashar al-Assad, with tanks and armored vehicles moving closer to the edges of the city overnight. Residents Tuesday said that hundreds of youths had blocked roads leading to the city's main residential neighborhoods with garbage containers, wood and metal to try to prevent a possible advance. Hama, the scene of a bloody crackdown by Assad's father nearly 30 years ago, has witnessed some of the biggest demonstrations in Syria's latest uprising against one-party rule, inspired by revolts across the Arab world. The Blackguard president sacked the governor Saturday and sent troops and tanks into the city. 2 off-duty Turkish soldiers were shot dead on Tuesday as they left their homes in the town of Yüksekova in southeast Turkey, local media reported. It was not clear if one or more gunmen staged the attack on the insurgents who were dressed in civilian clothes. The attack happened in the province of Hakkari, bordering both Iran and Iraq, which is at the heart of a conflict between the state and the Kurdistan Workers' Party guerrilla group. Separately, an explosion occurred on a main street in the capital Ankara on Tuesday as a military vehicle passed by. There were no casualties and police were investigating the scene. A Tunisian court has sentenced former President Zainal Abidine Ben Ali in absentia to 15 years in prison on charges of trafficking in drugs, weapons and archaeological artifacts. The verdict and sentence were read out by the judge after a one-day trial on Monday. Presiding Judge Tohmi Hafi noted Ben Ali's absence for this record, saying the accused is not present and is a fugitive. In his second trial since fleeing to Saudi Arabia following a popular uprising in January, the former president was also given a fine of $72,000. Monday's ruling follows a verdict on June 20th that sentenced Ben Ali and his wife Leila Trabelsi to 35 years in prison for misappropriating public funds and also imposed a $65.3 million fine. And the Thai Prime Minister-elect Yingluck Shinawatra said on Tuesday it was too early to decide on her new cabinet as joking for posts began and investors expressed concern that her populist policies could fuel inflation and see interest rates rise. An anti-taxing movement, the People's Alliance for Democracy, which is also pro-royalist, warned that bringing back Yingluck's brother ousted ex-premier Thaksin Shinawatra and reducing the power of the monarchy could trigger fresh protests. The Pheu Thai party won an estimated 264 seats in the 500-seat parliament and could govern alone, but Yingluck, who is said to be Thailand's first female prime minister, has said she would form a 5-party coalition to secure 299 seats. Local media said Pheu Thai would take over the key portfolios of defense, foreign affairs, interior, transport and agriculture, and that Yingluck, a successful businesswoman, would oversee the economic departments. And that's all for now. Thanks for staying with us.